Part 33. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 322. Han Qian was half sitting in front of the table, looking down at Lu Shenge, who was wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, and laughed softly. Has Qian Huan never treated you like this? Do you think that because you are rich, a well-known figure in the city, and the eldest son of the capital, everyone must treat you with respect, right? You are looking for someone to kill you. Me, what about me now? Let me get some interest back from you first. Lu Shenge wiped the corners of his mouth, lowered his head and sneered back. Unexpected, it really surprises me. I will blame what you did to me on the people around you. Don't forget that Yan Qingqing owes me 100 million. I can make her do anything. Don't play with my contract here. If you want to play dirty, you have to have a chance. It's your business to go to court, but it seems that it should be in our city's court. Do you think your foundation in the city is better than mine, stable? If you dare to attack the people around me, I will let Guan Yunbiao dig your wife's grave. You'd better target me alone. Don't think that you have no weaknesses, and don't be too pretentious. Look. Do I take you seriously? Lu Shenge couldn't laugh anymore. He never expected that Han Qian would be so shameless and would attack a dead person. Does he dare to bet? The answer is no. What else can't someone who dares to shoot Feng Lun do? Lu Shenge took out a cigar again, but before he could put it in his mouth, Han Qian waved it away. He picked up the lighter on the table and lit it. Han Qian also wanted to show off, but unfortunately he overestimated himself and inhaled the first cigar. He couldn't adapt to his mouth, and he kept coughing. Lu Shenge laughed at this. Han Qian, you touched me, do you think you still have a chance to return to glory? Don't forget Jijing, Yang Lan is in glory. Ahem, cough, Qian, cough, Qian Ling is also in glory. Your shareholders can't interfere in the company's operation contract and let you eat it? Qian Ling should really hope to break up with you as soon as possible, so that you can taste the feeling of revenge from your mother? If you can kill me, you are powerful, but I can kill you at any time. Are you curious about what the relationship between me and Feng Lun is? Han Qian was laughing. He was betting big that Lu Shenge was afraid of Feng Lun and that he had nothing to do with Feng Lun. Lu Shenge squinted at Han Qian. A volcano had erupted in his heart. At first, everyone admired him and he was recognized as the best. The promising Qian Huan died in his hands, but now he is being held down by Han Qian, unable to move. He didn't understand why he felt so unreasonable. The only explanation is that this guy has no bottom line, no bottom line. When Lu Shenge was silent, Han Qian whispered to Guan Yunbiao. Brother Guan, go and pick up all the things in your house. Since Director Lu is curious, let him take a look. Guan Yunbiao was really convinced by Han Qian. He nodded and walked home. When Guan Yunbiao walked out of the office, Cai Qinghe came back with 2 bottles of water in his hand. He looked curiously at the short knife on the desk and walked in. Only then did he see Lu Shenge's swollen side face. She is angry. Han Qian just wanted to push her away, but she was smiling. Cai Qinghe had to laugh, to give Lu Shenge the feeling that she knew everything and was not afraid of any threats. Han Qian pointed to the paper cup on the table and looked at Cai Qinghe. Why don't you give Lu Dong a glass of water? Paper cup? In Lu Shenge's impression, no one dared to pour him water from a paper cup. Cai Qinghe also hesitated a little. Han Qian's eyes gradually turned cold. When he was about to reach out for the paper cup, Cai Qinghe jumped in front of Han Qian. Before. She couldn't laugh anymore. Han Qian's eyes just now made her scared and unfamiliar. At that moment, she forgot to think. Yes. How could we forget what he did because we have been together for a long time? 3 months. In just 3 months, the most respectable people in the city would smile and say hello when they saw him, and the business bosses would call him Master Han when they saw him. Cai Kinghu brought a glass of water and handed it to Lu Shenge, saying softly, "Director Lu, please." Lu Shenge didn't answer, raised his head and looked at Han Qian and said softly, "Aren't you afraid that I'll call the police now?" Han Qian held the paper cup, leaned against the table with his legs crossed, and said softly, "I didn't stop you." The voices of both of them were very light, as if the unpleasantness just now had never happened. Lu Shenge took out his mobile phone. At that moment, Han Qian was really envious. Ji Jing had shown him this flip phone and was planning to give it to Han Qian. I wanted to buy it, but Han Qian was reluctant and wanted more than 10,000. After just one glance, Han Qian looked out the window. After waiting for a long time without hearing Lu Shenge's voice, Han Qian turned his head to look at Lu Shenge, then picked up his mobile phone and called Cheng Jin. "Lao Cheng, a few guns may appear in front of me soon. Can you come and check? You don't need to bring too many people." After saying this, Han Qian hung up the phone and threw it to Cai Kinghu, saying softly, "Charge." Cai Kinghu took the phone and didn't move. She didn't want to leave. She couldn't forget her identity. Lu Shenge put away his phone and stood up to look at Han Qian. He frowned. "Don't you know what fear is? You kill people better than a gun, and I'm not afraid of you. Why am I afraid of guns? Are you here to watch the excitement? Of course, I want to see how Cai Kinghu practices favoritism and malpractice." Han Qian raised his head and saw Cai Kinghu still standing there, frowned and said in a deep voice, "Are you deaf?" Cai Kinghu turned around and left, the anger in his heart about to explode. Han Qian today is extremely ungrateful. I've never seen him like this. Cai Kinghu walked out and Han Qian smiled at Lu Shenge. "I hope you can play more high-end, something I haven't seen before. Don't be too vulgar, it will be boring, and winning will be boring. As I thought, it's too easy to kill money for fun. I hope you don't let my high emotions end up being as simple as killing an ant. It's too boring. I don't mind if you get a kick out of it." "Ah!" Lu Shenge let out a chuckle. Han Qian's expression changed instantly, but he was still careless. Lu Shenge grabbed Han Qian's shoulders and hit Han Qian's stomach heavily with his knee. He looked down at Han Qian, who was spitting out bitter water like a hooked prawn. Han Qian said with contempt in his eyes, "Do you think of me as too noble?" Han Qian knelt on the ground holding his lower abdomen, feeling that his stomach acid was about to vomit out, and said in pain, "Lu Shenge, you're a humming figure. Are you planning a sneak attack?" Han Qian stood up slowly, and when he was about to fight back with a punch, he saw the short knife in Lu Sheng's finger. He gave up, picked up the cigar, took 2 puffs of it, and lit it again. Lu Shenge played with the blade and said lazily, "Han Qian, I am really curious about your relationship with Feng Lun, otherwise I would not have given you a second gift until today. Would Feng Lun touch me for you?" Han Qian shook his head and smiled. "No, Feng Lun will never help me confront you." After saying this, Lu Shenge pointed the tip of the knife at Han Qian's lower body and narrowed his eyes. "Then why are you pretending to be cool with me?" "But Kui Li will." Lu Shenge took back his dagger and frowned for the second time. "Are you kidding me?" Han Qian ignored him. Feng Lun didn't know how, and neither did Kui Li, but Han Qian really has a way to deal with Lu Shenge, because he is too cautious and calculating, and he will never ignore anything Han Qian says. It's just a heart attack. Lu Shenge was good at threatening people with their lives. His confidence was his money, and money happened to be what Han Qian lacked the most, so he had to attack places where money could not be protected. People's hearts. Guan Degu arrived at the office one step ahead of Cheng Jin. A bag of fishing gear was thrown in front of Han Qian. Han Qian lowered his head and glanced. Guan Yunbiao's expression was as usual. Han Qian stepped forward and opened the bag on the ground, took out a pistol and held it in his hand. Speak softly. Brother Guan, go ask Xiahua. If my phone has enough battery, bring it over. Guan Yunbiao's mind was full of doubts. He stood up and left the office. Han Qian suddenly turned around, turned on the pistol safety, pointed it at Lu Shenge's head, squinted his eyes and smiled. Does Mr. Lu like to play with guns? After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 323. Cheng Jin came and saw Han Qian squatting on the ground playing with the gun in the bag. He stepped forward, grabbed Han Qian's back collar and threw it far away. Then the permanent secretary led someone to put away the gun. Cheng Jin looked at it with a gloomy expression. Han Qian said coldly. Where did the gun come from? Tell me. Cai Qinghu was also in the office at this moment. Her eyes were full of confusion. She didn't know when the gun came. Lu Shenge wanted to say it was Guan Yunbiao's gun, but she always felt that something was wrong. Lu Shenge stood aside and looked at Han Qian with squinted eyes, wanting to see how he would explain. Han Qian sat on the ground and grinned at Cheng Jin. You guess. Cheng Jin pointed at Han Qian and said angrily. I'm just guessing. Han Qian still had a smile on his face and said with a smile. Where do you think these guns came from? Cheng Jin snorted coldly and said angrily. I already knew the news I got today. I had guessed it before, but I didn't have time to do it. I was anxious to get Guan Yunbiao out, so I asked him to look for it. I originally wanted to find more and give them to you, but unfortunately I only know so much in the past 2 days, so I just put them all together. I left it to you, but I didn't dare to take it with me at first, so I asked Guan Yunbiao to get it. Cheng Jin frowned and looked at Cai Qinghu, saying in a deep voice. You know too. Cai Qinghu nodded confusedly. He did know. Did Lu Shenge say this when he started? At the same time, Han Qian looked at Lu Shenge and chuckled. Director Lu also knows that Guan Yunbiao found these guns, right? Lu Shenge narrowed his eyes and smiled, reluctantly, but he had to nod. I know. I see that Guan Yunbiao has been busy recently. His master Tu Xiao has a cooperative relationship with my company and is relatively close. It just so happened that I came to see the shopping mall project today just to ask if he needed any help. Han Qian smiled lightly. The remaining guns still need Lu Dong's assistance. That's natural. Lu Shenge's heart was about to explode. He had been plotting, and finally was plotted by this mud-legged guy. Except for Han Qian and Lu Shenge, everyone in this room was confused at this moment. Why did things suddenly become like this? Han Qian smiled, turned to look at Cheng Jin, scratched his head awkwardly, and whispered. I couldn't help but touch it a few times just now. Old Cheng, will I be in trouble? How about I go back with you to record a confession or something? Cheng Jin glanced at everyone in the office, and finally laid his eyes on Han Qian, slowly closed his eyes and sighed. No, but you don't want any rewards. You deserve to do these things for the Yeomanman. In addition, Cai Qinghu, please write a report and submit it to the superiors. Just write it truthfully. Han Qian. Lu Shenge. You guys, you two better be honest with me, I don't want to throw you two into it before I retire. Han Qian raised his hands and nodded. Lu Shenge smiled. Mayor Cheng educates you. Things were very strange, very strange. Guan Yunbiao didn't know what happened. Why did Cheng Jin come and leave suddenly without saying anything? Cai Qinghu was also confused. What report should he write? How should this report be written? When the two were confused, Lu Shenge clapped his hands. It's amazing. Han Qian, you surprised me so much. You simply framed these guns for Fen Lun. Do you know that you are not unjust when he kills you? Han Qian shrugged, curled his lips, pointed at his head with one finger and sneered. Haha, what I did should satisfy Director Lu. After saying this, he pointed his finger at Lu Shenga and curled his lips and said sarcastically. Your second attack is meaningless. It's too childish. It should be my turn, right? How long will you stay in the city? End it as soon as possible. Lu Shenga smiled lightly. Ha ha ha, don't leave. It's fun to play slowly. Don't let me down. If I am disappointed, our game will end early. You are much more fun than Qian Huan. I like it very much. It's a pity that I don't like you, so I won't give it away. Lu Shenga left, and when Cai Qinghu leaned out of the window to take a look, Han Qian appeared behind her, grabbed her back collar and said lightly. Next time you want to get angry, please distinguish the occasion and place. You can make trouble with me in private as much as you want, but don't let me repeat what I say a second time on certain things. Cai Qinghu turned around, looked at Han Qian aggrievedly, and whispered. Ms. Sir, did I disappoint you? Very thorough. After saying this, Han Qian turned around, walked towards Guan Degu and punched him in the stomach. The next second he pulled Guan Yunbiao closer and whispered against his ear. Don't play with such a big guy. I can't protect you. I don't want my brother to go in and squat. I'm just enjoying myself outside. When I give you a gun, you can have it in your hands if you have a gun. Cheng Jin is not a fool. The people in the inspection team will also stare at you and target you because you were released from prison early. Now do me a favor and find a car for Sul Yang, just Xia Li. Guan Yunbiao gritted his teeth and nodded, turned around and left the office. Then Han Qian sat on the master chair of the desk, looked at Cai Qinghu, patted his knee, and said softly. Come here and I'll teach you how to write a report. Seeing Han Qian's actions, Cai Qinghu's face instantly turned red, and he lowered his head and muttered. It's not good to do it on your lap. He said it was not good, but his legs were not idle. Just when he was about to sit down, Han Qian raised his head and dragged Cai Qinghu's buttocks, frowning. I dusted my knees, what are you doing? Go get a chair, I said, you right? Dear leader, I lived up to expectations and came up with something. Ms. Sir, isn't it too disgusting? Then write it yourself, and I'll tell you what to write. After Cai Qinghu finished writing the report in his hand, he slowly raised his head while looking at the report, looked at Han Qian in disbelief, and frowned. My lord, you want me to lie about military information? Han Qian shook his head and said calmly. This is what I have done recently. I am just telling you honestly. When you know whether it is the year of the monkey or the moon of the horse, just write according to what I told you. When you lie, your face doesn't turn red and your heart doesn't beat. Stable. While speaking, Cai Qinghu walked up to Han Qian, looked down at Han Qian and said softly. You're helping me. Not a question mark. Han Qian opened his eyes and laughed softly. It's a gift. I've already given it to you and I can't leave you alone. In the next second, two red lips fell on Han Qian's face. From the first time he was forcefully kissed, to the second forceful kiss and cooperation, to the current active kiss, his feelings were changing, again and again. Variety. Time is such a magical thing. It can turn a person who decided to send him to prison into a person who is willing to take the initiative to kiss when they first met. But Han Qian was very unhappy. He doesn't like pushing back. This makes him look very unmanly. In short, Han Qian was very unhappy. After leaving the office at the construction site, Han Qian received a call from Jian Ling. You met Lu Shenga. It's not a question mark either. Han Qian, the co-pilot sitting in Cai Qinghu, rubbed his head and said feebly. Seeing him, I took off the fig leaf and took the initiative to break up with him. At this point, Han Qian motioned to Cai Qinghu to park on the side of the road, opened the door and got out of the car, waved to Cai Qinghu, pointed to the phone, and told her to go ahead and get busy. He had something to do. Cai Qinghu nodded. She did have some things to do back at the Yamen gate. Han Qian continued while holding his cell phone. Since he wants to play, I have no reason to retreat. Auntie, please don't persuade me. Even if I agree, I am just saying yes. Counting his 2 attacks today, I will be the one to attack next time. Today I will kill him. As soon as he finished speaking, he could clearly feel the breathing on the other side of the phone getting heavier. Han Qian lowered his head and muttered softly. I put a gun to his head. What? Qian Ling let out a scream, which made Han Qian's ears hurt. He squatted on the side of the road with his head down and said nothing, as if he was a child who had done something wrong. Qian Ling was silent for a long time, and then sighed heavily after a long time. Tone. Xiao Qian, I'm afraid that the old scene will reappear. You are the most like Qian Huan. I can find the feeling of treating your son in you. Be good, let's not play with him anymore. Okay, please be obedient. I'm giving Ching 5% of the shares, please stop playing. Han Qian lowered his head and said in anger. No, if he just wants to play with me, I can quit at any time, but he mentioned you. My character is very simple. If others treat me well, I will return 10,000 to them. If someone bullies me for a day, I have bullied him all my life, I am petty, vindictive, and angry. Where are you? Han Qian raised his head and looked around, then lowered his head and whispered. I'm squatting on the Shili River Bridge. 10 minutes later, the yellow McLaren roared over. Qian Wan got out of the car and squatted next to Han Qian, lowering his head and whispering. Brother, why did you mess with my aunt? When you called me, you were hysterical and asked me to pick you up. Han Qian held the cigarette in his mouth and raised his head and sighed, stretched out his hand to ruffle Qian Wan's hair and smiled. I'm in trouble. I'm going to be beaten soon. Please stop me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Huan. Chapter 324. Qian Wan and Han Qian were both a little nervous when they went upstairs. Qian Wan didn't know what happened. She only knew that her aunt who loved her was very angry. Qian Wan opened the door with the key and Han Qian quietly entered the door, looking at the people sitting on the sofa. Qian Ling looked coldly on her face, and both of them swallowed. Qian Wan said softly. Gu. Han Qian grinned. Aunt. Qian Ling looked up at the 2 children standing at the door, closed her eyes, sighed softly, and replied in a low voice. Wan Wan goes back to the room to play games. Aunt. I'll let you go back to your room. Qian Ling's sudden outburst frightened Qian Wan, who had no time to change his shoes. He ran all the way back to the room. Hearing the sound, he even locked the door. At this moment, Han Qian was confused. Didn't he talk well on the way, brother and sister? The 2 of us should be the strongest allies, never abandon or give up. How did it become like this? Qian Ling sat on the sofa and held her head with one hand. Han Qian changed his shoes and sat on the single sofa. He reached for the banana on the table and felt a little hungry after eating one. He got up and walked to the kitchen and saw the inside of the refrigerator. There were 2 more flour rolls. Han Qian picked up one and returned to the living room, biting it one by one. Qian Ling raised her head and looked at Han Qian with a frown. Didn't you eat? No, I have been busy since I came out from Nuan's parents' place in the morning. Just a moment. Qianling took out her mobile phone and dialed her fixed ordering number and told them to bring some vegetables and rice. She specially ordered a portion of soy bones for Han Qian. Qianling knew that Han Qian liked meat, especially meat. After putting down the phone, Qianling covered her head and whispered, "Lushenge took the initiative to find you." Han Qian swallowed the last bite of the flour roll and spoke with difficulty with his chest hanging down. "No. I took the initiative to contact him. He was also waiting for me. There are some things that should be responded to, otherwise he would think that I was easy to bully. But I didn't expect that this grandson would also sneak up and exchange hands with each other. He flowed, he even got some blood, but I didn't take advantage of him. He threatened to attack the people around me, and I threatened to dig his wife out of her grave if he dared to touch her. He gave up." Qianling looked stunned, tilted her head and looked at Han Qian. "Digging his dead wife out of the grave?" Qianling waved her hand and slapped Han Qian on the shoulder, saying angrily, "For such a damaging thing, just listen to Auntie. You and Lushenge are fighting, we can just live in peace and stability." "No." Han Qian's answer was straightforward. Qianling waved her hand and slapped Qian Huan on the shoulder again, saying angrily, "What do you gain by fighting him? I didn't expect to get anything. I feel like I don't need anything now. Lushenge has a brain disease. He needs someone to play with him. If I don't play with him, he will come to you. This kind of thing, it's better to let this junior stand in front of you, and you don't need to take action against him." Qianling sighed. She knew that it was useless to persuade Han Qian like this. She took the phone and handed it to Han Qian and whispered, "Xiao Qian, I showed you a villa on the beach." Han Qian's eyes lit up and he grinned. "Real?" Qianling smiled and nodded lightly. "Really, if you don't continue to fight with Lushenge, you will have to settle the matter tomorrow." Han Qian stopped answering and whispered why the food hadn't been delivered yet. Qianling saw this and asked again. "And a car and 5% of the stock." Han Qian raised his head and looked at the roof and said softly, "Auntie, did you design this decoration yourself?" Qianling got angry and slapped Han Qian on the shoulder again. "Why don't you listen to my advice? Do you insist that I come over and let Ching Ching persuade you? It's useless for her to come here. Auntie, I'm hungry. Please urge them to bring it here quickly. I haven't eaten in the morning. It's already 1 o'clock." Han Qian started to talk about turning chairs. Qianling knew that it was useless to persuade him, so she whispered helplessly, "Then whatever help you need now, I will try my best to give it to you." "Well, just ask them to deliver the food quickly." Qianling got angry, pointed at Han Qian and cursed. "You just know how to eat? Then bring a bottle of drink, I haven't had one in a long time." Qianling tilted her head and looked at Han Qian. "It's okay for you to starve to death. I'm going to rest. Don't disturb me. After dinner, go play games with Wan Wan. I'll continue talking about this topic with you when I wake up." Not long after Qianling left, the food delivery guy came over. When Han Qian was about to pay, the delivery guy told him that the restaurant had been bought by Sister Qian and his own business. Han Qian looked at the 20-year-old man in front of him. The many-year-old boy frowned. "You call my aunt sister, and I have to call you uncle. Brother. Everyone has their own opinions." This belated lunch was very rich, with 2 vegetarian dishes, garlic lettuce and spinach and peanuts, ants climbing a tree, 2 meat dishes, fish-flavored shredded pork, and a pot of hot bones. Han Qian regretted eating the cold flour roll. After putting the dishes on the table, he knocked on Qian Wan's door and told the internet-addicted girl that he was out for dinner. Qian Wan opened the door carefully, glanced at the living room, and whispered, "Where's my aunt?" Han Qian pointed to the master bedroom opposite the door. The 2 guys sneaked into the restaurant to eat. Qian Wan didn't seem to like eating food. She didn't touch the spinach, peanuts, and fish-flavored pork shreds, but Han Qian didn't dare. For spicy food, I barely touched my chopsticks on a plate of fish-flavored shredded pork. After the meal, Qian Wan went back to the room, threw the car keys to Han Qian, and whispered, "If you want to go home, drive yourself. I have to type a copy tonight and don't have time to see you off. I'll take a taxi back. As long as you are happy." This girl ran away again. Playing games is not as big as the world. Qian Wan has no ambition. Qian Ling is used to it. What else can Han Qian not used to? He lay on the sofa for more than an hour. Qian Ling came out and stood at the door looking at Han Qian. "How are you thinking about it? Are you ready to continue?" Han Qian turned his head and smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm a little stuffed after eating. I'll lie down and sleep for a while. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first." Since she couldn't persuade him, Qian Ling didn't want to. In fact, she was also trying to persuade herself in the room. Does it mean that if Lu Shengge beats Qian Huan, he must also beat Han Qian? Two equally excellent children have completely different personalities. Is Han Qian suitable to be her heir? Let Qian Wan live a carefree life, and use the fight between Han Qian and Lu Shengge as a test? Qian Ling couldn't do such a cold-blooded thing, but she had to accept this reality. She knew that the reason Lu Shengge chose Han Qian as a target was because of her recent performance, her regard for Han Qian, and her pride in Li Dehai's shares. "Seize." Qian Ling sighed softly. "Now that you have made this decision, I will no longer advise you. I can give you any financial help, but other things are beyond my reach. You have to be mentally prepared." Han Qian looked at the roof and smiled. "I have a good idea. I really hope that Lu Shengge will play dirty. This kind of thing has never stopped since I was a child. I am afraid that he will suddenly engage in commercial warfare. I don't know much about these things. There is no greenness or warmth. This method has helped me a lot, but fortunately I have an old father-in-law who doesn't play with relationships. No one in the city is as tough as me when it comes to relationships. I can't imagine how I could lose or how he could win." After saying this, his phone rang. Han Qian looked at the text messages on his phone, stood up and said awkwardly, "Auntie, there's a fire in the backyard. I have to leave first." After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Huan. Chapter 325. When Nuan asked for leave and went home, only to find that Han Qian, who originally said he would go home to sleep, was not at home. Moreover, given Han Qian's current situation, Nuan Wen was immediately angry. A text message. "Which vixen are you looking for?" Han Qian went home obediently. He was not stingy this time. He took a taxi home and went upstairs to open the door, all in one go. Han Qian almost choked to death with this tone. Seeing the warm embrace-wearing company uniform sitting on the sofa, Han Qian smiled slightly awkwardly. "It's not even 3 o'clock yet, why are you back?" Nuan hugged the TV and said in a cold voice. "Am I not a bitch? Don't I have an ex-husband who was drunk last night and feel uncomfortable? Am I not a bitch to worry about my ex-husband not being willing to buy clothes? It's superfluous. I am superfluous. I have so many beauties to accompany me. How can I still use it? I'm taking care of an ex-wife who's tired of looking at her? Ha ha." Han Qian frowned slightly, looked down at the clothes bag placed under the TV, and saw KFC on the dining table. Han Qian changed his shoes, picked up the KFC and sat next to Wen Nuan. As soon as he sat down, Wen got up and went to the table. "Sofa. Even a clay bodhisattva should have a temper." Han Qian stood up and moved closer to Wen Nuan again. He sat on the sofa and put his arms around Wen Nuan's shoulders. The next second, he was shaken off by Wen. Han Qian continued to hold on to Wen Wen with the attitude of saying that good things take a long time. After resisting twice, Wen Wen stopped struggling. Let Han Qian put his arm around his shoulders. Han Qian smiled when he saw this, took a bite of the chicken leg and said with a smile, "It's full of the smell of love, it smells so good." When Nuan made a cold sound, glanced at Han Qian sideways from the corner of his eye, and said contemptuously, "Love? What a stupid love you and I have. It's adultery. Adultery after divorce." Seeing Han Qian eating deliciously, Wen Nuan thought about it more and more unwillingly. He reached out and grabbed Han Qian's half-eaten chicken leg, stuffed it directly into his mouth, and said vaguely, "Don't eat the things I bought. Those vixen things outside are so good. They buy you clothes, cigarettes, and cars. You, Master Han, are so nourished." Han Qian lowered his head and stretched out his hand to pinch his warm face and said fondly, "Why didn't I spend 300,000 yuan to buy a motorcycle for another woman? Oh, you Shisai's car, Cai Qinghu's information, Yan Qingqing's shares, Ji Jing's 100,000, nursery rhymes work, buy me a motorcycle. This will make you remember. I'll give you the money, okay?" Han Qian looked at the jealous Wen Nuan and smiled. "The money I gave them to talk to is not my money. The car belongs to Qian Ling, the shares belong to Li Dehai, the information was checked by Qinghu himself, the work of Tan Jiao was influenced by my second uncle, and Ji Jing's 100,000 yuan was bought by Lin Zongheng for my leg. Money, think about where did the money for your motorcycle come from? That's what I earned through hard work and risking my life. I didn't even frown when I transferred money to Lu Guangming. Isn't that stupid?" Wen Wen was not an unreasonable person. When she thought about it carefully, it was really like this. What she gave them was money that had not yet reached Han Qian's hands. Wen Wen knew how stingy he was. He would argue over 50 cents when buying groceries. "I am not willing to spend any more money on myself. My mother-in-law said that the money that goes into Han Qian's hands is the same as going into a dead man's coffin. It would be even harder to get it out to buy something he doesn't like." But Wen Nuan was unhappy. He didn't even eat at noon and went to buy clothes and lunch for this guy. But when he got home, he found that he was not at home. It could be said that he didn't go home at all. The snack bag on the table was still there. Nuan spit out the chicken bones and frowned. "I should spend your money. It's reasonable for me to be nice to you, because you call Lao Wen dad, and I call your parents mom and dad. It cost me money to buy a motorcycle. But I feel at ease. It was mom who asked you to buy it. You just bought it for me. We didn't say it wasn't right, right? If you asked me to come back, wouldn't I come back right away? Is there any woman who can speak more effectively than you? Our mother. How many times a year does my mother talk about me? I was busy with Guan Yunbiao in the morning and met with Cheng Jin. In the afternoon, Aunt Jian wants to see me and talk to me about Jian Huan. Why are you talking about him? Everyone in the city praises Jian Huan, but I don't feel good about it. He doesn't have the courage of a man at all. Mom said he is similar to Lao Wen when he was young. He is a few years older than me. I met him once, I feel like I'm not as attractive as you, you're the ugliest." Han Qian smiled. Who doesn't like the woman he likes to say good things about him? When Nuan reached out and took the second chicken drumstick and handed it to Han Qian, staring at Han Qian and asked, "You really didn't go to see Yan Qingqing?" Han Qian bit the chicken leg and shook his head, saying vaguely, "No, I didn't go to the company today. There were a lot of messy things. But I met Lu Sheng at the construction site. Yan Hu lied to my innocence. You are quite single and stupid. Let me see what clothes you bought me." Han Qian stood up, walked to the TV, squatted down, gnawed on the chicken leg, put the bone on the coffee table, wiped his hands, and said softly. Did you buy both underwear and socks? Do you know what size underwear I wear? When Nuan crossed her legs, gnawed on the chicken wings, and replied with a curl of her lips. I've seen your naked buttocks. What don't you know? Hey. Can you go to the guest room to change clothes? Do you really think that we are a couple? Even if we are a couple, the curtains are not closed. Oh. Han Qian walked into the guest room with his pants and bag in hand. When Nuan said he didn't want to see it, but he still stood up and followed into the guest room. Looking at Han Qian, who was sitting by the bed and taking off his pants, Wen Nuan leaned against the door frame and whispered softly. Han Qian, how much money do you have now? Are you going to deal with the relationship between us after you pay me back? Han Qian took off his wool pants and sat on the edge of the bed, tilted his head and thought for a while, then said softly. Have no idea. Oh, Han Qian, you must be sleepy. Han Qian frowned in confusion, then shook his head. Fortunately, I wanted to clean it up after trying on the clothes. The house is a bit messy. Nuan shook his head and said softly. You are tired? Han Qian asked rhetorically. You are tired? Nuan nodded. I didn't sleep well last night. Oh, and I should be sleepy too, right? Right. Then I lie down now. You lie down inside. Are you afraid that I will run away? Han Qian went to bed with doubts. Wen Nuan was not very good-tempered at the moment, and Han Qian didn't dare to have a conflict with her. If he called his mother and the old man, he would be scolded again. Wen Nuan took off his coat. He got into the quilt with his pants and pulled Han Qian's arm to use as a pillow. With his back to Han Qian, he picked up Han Qian's other hand and placed it on his soft belly without a trace of fat. Wen Nuan said softly. Do you want me to take off your shirt? Han Qian's body trembled, and the image of He Yu's poem appeared in his mind, and his voice was a little stiff and difficult. No. No need. Wen Nuan took off his woolen sweater, leaving only a small vest on his body. Han Qian's hand was placed in a familiar position. When Han Qian was distracted, Wen Nuan spoke softly. Han Qian, it seems that Mom knows about our divorce, not your mother-in-law. After saying these words, Han Qian's body trembled, and he whispered after a long silence. How do you feel it? I called my mom that day. She asked me if I lived with you, and asked when we were going to have a baby. She and my dad moved here to help take care of the baby. I could vaguely feel that my mom was afraid that I would leave you. I'll tell you right away. The Chinese New Year is coming soon, and I'll have a holiday on New Year's Day. The ripples in Han Qian's heart disappeared, but he hugged Wen Nuan tighter and sighed softly. Yes, it's the Chinese New Year. Do you remember the day we got married? I don't remember. It's a lie anyway. I don't want to remember. I want to go home early to see my mother. Let's go back early, okay? Okay. Go back on New Year's Day. How about we have a child after we get remarried? Good. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Huan. Chapter 326. With Nephrite in his arms, Han Qian had no distracting thoughts. He was worried that his mother would know about their divorce, and even more worried that he would find out that he initiated the divorce. If he really found out, the old man's coffin would have been purchased. He closed his eyes thinking about it. Also fell asleep. I don't know how long he had slept. Han Qian felt itchy on his face. He raised his hand to scratch it. He only stopped for a few seconds. Han Qian slowly opened his eyes and looked at the girl in front of him who was playing naughtily with a lock of hair. Han Qian held her tightly in his arms and whispered softly with his eyes closed. Stop making trouble and go to sleep. I've slept for 6 or 7 hours. I can't sleep anymore. I'm a little hungry. Let's go out to eat? Han Qian got up, stretched, rubbed his eyes and whispered. I'll cook for you. Wen Nuan pulled Han Qian's arm to prevent him from getting out of bed, and said softly. Let's go out to eat? If you want to eat barbecue and drink some beer, go ahead. That's okay, but not many are open at this time. I don't drink while driving. Okay, let's go on a motorcycle? I'll ride the motorcycle back. If you don't want to ride, it's cold. Let's drive Xiaobai. Han Qian put on the clothes bought by Wen Nuan. They were too casual and made Han Qian look a bit like a man in his 20s. After Wen put on that set of professional attire, the relationship between the two seemed a little unnatural. It felt like Han Qian was like it's like being taken care of. Han Qian wanted to change his clothes, but Nuan refused, saying that no one cared about these things at night. It was Wen who drove. Han Qian didn't like driving in the first place, and Wen disliked him for driving too slowly. He drove all the way to a barbecue restaurant near the Shili River Bridge. This restaurant was open all night, and the environment was not bad. It's just that the consumption is a little higher. Han Qian and Wen Nuan chose a seat in the lobby and sat down. They often looked at them, but fortunately they were both qualified and they were just looking. Wen had a lot of things. They basically ate a little and left the rest. If Han Qian was asked to solve it, Han Qian would not stop it. The two of them ate out very rarely, and there was no need to say not to waste it. If they couldn't eat it, they would just pack it up and go home. When Wen Nuan ordered 2 bottles of cold beer, Han Qian frowned. Wen covered her face with the menu. As long as she couldn't see Han Qian's face, she thought he had no objection. When the waiter brought a plate of oysters, Han Qian looked ugly, stared at Wen Nuan and whispered. Did you order something for me? Wen Nuan looked proud and raised his head. Yeah, they say this is good for men. Han Qian's face is covered with black lines, and now his waist is of no use at all. Why should he mend it? This thing and warm explanation are of no use at all. She can be said to be like a piece of photographic paper about certain things, the kind that will slide off if ink is splashed on it. Too lazy to talk to her. Han Qian looked at the meat on the table and frowned. You didn't order any vegetables. Wen Nuan opened a bottle of beer and curled his lips. I don't want to eat, so stop pretending. You don't like vegetables either. You drink juice and I drink. Cheers. Wen Nuan held up the beer cup, and Han Qian held the pink-red juice. The two clinked their glasses. Wen took a big sip, and Han Qian started chatting while holding the juice. Xiao Nuan, you can't be picky about food. Eating meat all the time is not good for your health. When you supplement protein, you should also supplement vitamins, so that your body will be strong. You see, Yan Qingqing is not picky about food. Every time you can't beat her even if you try to do it, you're anxious just looking at her. Nuan put down the wine glass, picked up the veal and squinted at Han Qian. Can you be quiet for a while? Please stop nagging while we eat, okay? People who know me well know that you are my ex-husband, and those who don't know think you are my dad. This nagging seems like an old man. Isn't it better for you? I'm too lazy to talk to you. Han Qian lowered his head to eat the meat, kindly treating it as a donkey's liver and lungs, and then a pretty face appeared on the small wooden fence similar to the adjacent table, wearing a pair of exaggerated black-rimmed glasses. Nursery rhymes. There was a bit of surprise in Wen Nuan's voice. I didn't expect to meet Teacher Tong here. Tong Yao squinted and smiled at Wen. Shishi and I are listening to you two chattering here. Wen Nuan, you really don't eat vegetables. Since they had met each other and were familiar with each other, Wen Nuan offered to share a table. It was pointless for her to drink by herself if Han Qian didn't drink. The 3 women were making a scene. Wen got up and sat next to Han Qian, and Han Qian was pushed inside. 3 women in one drama. Han Qian was very lucky that tonight it was these 3 girls who had a good relationship, not Wen Nuan, Yan Qingqing, and Cai Qinghu, otherwise this place might have become a battlefield, and the drinks of these 3 girls were all in a mess. The 3 women held up their wine glasses and shouted long live singlehood, but Han Qian's feet were stepped on almost to death. Sitting inside, he had to pour wine for the 3 women. Yu Shisai's eyes wandered over Han Qian and Wen Nuan, and then alcohol whispered. Are you 2 still virgins? If you live under the same roof, you can't have sex. Nuan's face turned red instantly. He took the bones on the table and smashed Yu Shisai, scolding. Why do you say everything about poetry? Yu Shisai avoided the bones, looked at Han Qian with burning eyes, and said softly. Don't you think about it at all? Han Qian lowered his head and carefully picked at the shrimps. This was one of the few things he could accept in the ocean. He raised his head, glanced at Yu Shisai, and whispered. I'm not as gangster as you. Yu Shisai narrowed his eyes and continued. Why have I become such a gangster? What do you think? She must have done it on purpose. Han Qian lowered his head and stopped answering. Yu Shisai was the only one who dared to push him and give him something by the way. Maybe it's because the folk customs abroad are more open. Anyway, Han Qian is very afraid of her now. It's not that he's afraid that she'll act like a hooligan next time, but Han Qian is worried that he won't be able to help but eat the girls around him. It's very difficult for him to endure it now. Seeing that Han Qian was giving up, Yu Shisai lost interest in teasing. He picked up the wine glass and took a big sip. He looked at Yu Shisai with a warm face and said in a low voice. Shisai, please stop teasing him. What if one day his bestiality comes out? Yu Shisai giggled, and her nursery rhymes became a little bolder after drinking, and she laughed softly. Isn't this what you dreamed of? It's your first time to win over Han Qian before Yan Qingqing. Are these 3 hooligans? Han Qian squinted at the 3 people, and finally lowered his head helplessly. In the face of power, one should be patient, must be patient, otherwise these 3 girls, Han Qian is really afraid of this trio, a monster and an ex-wife. There is a combination of female gangsters. Not to be offended. After eating for more than 2 hours, Han Qian was the one who paid the bill. He spent more than 570 yuan in total. He was carrying nursery rhymes in his left hand and warmth in his right hand. Yu Shisai, who was walking in front, acted like nothing was wrong, humming a song as he walked. Looking at the graceful girl, Han Qian felt a little guilty. Yu Shisai arranged warmth and nursery rhymes into the back seat, and she sat in the passenger seat. As soon as Han Qian got in the car, Yu Shisai shouted that it was so hot, and took off his coat to reveal the little girl inside. Vest, pulling on the collar from time to time to fan the wind. Han Qian swallowed nervously, held the steering wheel with both hands and looked forward, silently reciting some sutra in his heart, telling himself that he must hold back. The warmth was behind him. When he was struggling to endure, a burst of fragrance entered his nose. And then my cheeks felt extremely soft. I'll help you fasten your seat belt. Is there such a thing as wearing a seat belt? Yu Shisai seemed to be unable to find her. This lasted for about 10 seconds. Han Qian couldn't bear it any longer. If he continued like this, he might be suffocated to death in the car. He pushed Yu Shisai's shoulders and pressed her against the passenger seat, saying softly. Quiet. Me. Do it yourself. Yu Shisai didn't want to be obedient. She bent over and lay on Han Qian's lap, stretched out her naughty hand and flicked little Han Qian, and said seductively. Can you bear it? Are you a man? Han Qian put on his seat belt, pushed Yu Shisai's head away, and said coldly. Drive, don't make trouble. Can you bear it? Can't help it? But looking at those bright eyes in the rearview mirror, Han Qian was horrified. Warm and not drunk. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 327. Along the way, Yu's poems were dishonest. Music was playing as the co-pilot twisted his soft figure. His seductive moans and captivating eyes from time to time made Han Qian's already unsteady heart waver. Han Qian was worried that this half-breed was turning into a monster. While looking forward, he stretched out his hand to hold Yu Shisai's head. The next second Han Qian froze, his finger was in Yu Shisai's mouth. Han Qian's first reaction was to look in the rear-view mirror. Not worried. Nuan fell asleep. Han Qian quickly withdrew his hand, and then heard the sound of Yu Shisai's teeth clashing. Han Qian's heart trembled, and Yu Shisai said coldly, "Next time you dare to reject me, it won't be your finger that's bitten off. I'm asking you to have a child. Have you given me enough to eat? Keep your voice down. Stop talking nonsense. Where is your home?" "No home." Han Qian didn't know where he offended Yu Shisai. He looked back at the nursery rhyme. Han Qian had no choice but to call Jijing and ask for the location. Jijing was already waiting downstairs in her pajamas. When she took the nursery rhyme, without saying anything, Han Qian helped teacher Tong into the elevator, and then looked at Yu Shisai again. The half-breed still didn't speak. Han Qian took a deep breath. "You sleep with Nuan at night. I'll sleep with you. Can you please stop messing with this worthless guy? I'm worthless and you don't want to give it away for free. What am I worth? I'm sick and you are sick. If you want to bother me, I'll get out of the car and find a man's car." Han Qian turned his head and glanced at Yu Shisai, then sighed and started the car, saying in a low voice, "They are all sick. Let Yu Shisai get out of the car and get into another man's car? Do you think Yu Shisai dare not?" But Han Qian didn't dare. He really thought he was sick. When Yu Shisai said he wanted to get into another man's car, he felt a little unhappy. "Ill. I am sick." Driving home all the way, he walked into the elevator with Nuan on his back, ignoring Yu Shisai. This woman didn't seem to need to pay attention to you. She went in to change her shoes, took off her clothes and went to the bathroom to take a shower. She was more familiar than when she arrived at her own home. Han Qian carried Nuan on his back. When Lu was placed on the bed, just as he was about to get up, his neck suddenly tightened, and he was strangled to the bed by Wen Nuan, and a vicious voice came from his ears. "What's going on between you and Yu Shisai? It's okay. It's okay. Let go. I'm going to die. I'm going to die." Wen Nuan let go of his arm. When Han Qian stood up, Wen Nuan raised his foot and put it on Han Qian's butt, saying angrily, "Go away. Just because you don't like Yu Shisai, it doesn't mean that Yu Shisai won't like you. There are many people who are nice to you, so why did you just give her the car? Han Qian, you'd better be honest, otherwise don't even think about touching me in the future." Han Qian raised his hands in surrender. Okay, I understand. Remember to lock the door. You have to lock it yourself, I don't have the key. I said your door." Han Qian didn't even dare to take a shower. He rushed back to his room and locked the door to sleep. He slept for too long in the afternoon and couldn't fall asleep now. He stared at the roof and listened quietly to the sounds in the corridor. To be honest, he missed that feeling. Until she fell asleep, there was no sound from outside. Yu Shisai, a woman, couldn't use common sense to understand her. Since the nursery rhymes left, she was like an ice cube. Han Qian didn't pay attention to what he said along the way, and he didn't come over at night. Make trouble. Early the next morning, When Han Qian came downstairs, the two girls had already had breakfast. Morning. Han Qian said hello guiltily and responded with a warm smile. Yu Shisai was as cold as an ice cube. Han Qian really didn't know how to provoke her, so he didn't even bother to take a look. I went to the bathroom to wash up, and when I came out, there was no breakfast on the table. Han Qian tilted his head and looked at Yu Shisai sitting at the dining table, and said softly, "Where's breakfast?" Yu Shisai glanced at Han Qian indifferently and said lightly, "I only bought 2 copies." After saying that, he stood up and walked to Han Qian's side, stretched out his hand and pushed Han Qian away. "Get out of the way." Han Qian was really a little angry, grabbed Yu Shisai's shoulders and frowned. "Why did I provoke you?" Yu Shisai replied lightly. "You didn't provoke me. I'm sick. Don't be the same as me." Han Qian was stunned. He let go of his hand and looked at Yu Shisai. What she said didn't sound like she was angry, nor did she seem to be joking. Judging from Yu Shisai's performance, there was something wrong with this woman. She was hospitalized. Sometimes they will appear frequently during a certain period, and they will suddenly disappear for half a month. When they meet again, they will not feel unnatural because of their sudden disappearance. She was also very indifferent to Han Qian when she was warm last time. After what happened at night, she disappeared the next day. Han Qian couldn't figure out a girl's heart, so he didn't bother to think about it. He shouted to the warmth upstairs that he was going to work first, then changed his shoes and went out. "If you can't figure it out, just stop thinking about it." When he went out, he saw Zheng Jing with 2 dark circles under his eyes. Han Qian smiled and said hello. The latter waved tiredly and went back to catch up on his sleep. "Go out, take the bus, go to work." It was exactly 9 o'clock when we arrived at the company. The punch-in machine once again failed to respond. Han Qian was already used to it. Going to take fingerprints was just a formality. Looking at the crowds of people outside the employee elevator door, Han Qian sighed and walked to the executive elevator. Han Qian still agrees with the allocation of staff elevators and executive elevators in honor. The executive elevators are mainly used by their assistants and secretaries to deliver urgent documents. It does not necessarily take long to wait for the staff elevators. While waiting for the elevator to come down, Lu Shenga came. Lu Shenga was very handsome in a suit and tie. The moment he walked into the main entrance of the company, there were female employees in the company who exclaimed and screamed. He was 1.85 meters tall. Weighs about 140, has slender legs that make models envious, and has a cold face on his handsome face. A handsome, wealthy, and talented man of the ascetic type is the nemesis of all women. His handsomeness was different from Han Qian's. The staff could only take a few glances at Han Qian's handsomeness and have a favorable impression, but Lu Shenga was enough to make them abandon their reserve and almost go crazy. Han Qian also saw Lu Shenga. He smiled and chuckled softly. "Lu Dongzhao." Lu Shenga gave Han Qian a smile that everyone expected, and said with a faint smile, "Master Han is not late today? It's surprising." Han Qian smiled bitterly, shook his head, and replied softly, "There are some things we need to talk about today. The weather is cold and we can't start work at the 2 construction sites. We can't just be idle. I have talked with Ching Ching before about introducing warmth into the Glory Water Park. Come over today to implement it. Director Lu is here today. Have a meeting." Lu Shenga shook his head and took out a cigarette and handed it to Han Qian. This time it was not a cigar. There was no word on the cigarette box. It was exactly the same as the one Cai King Hu gave him. After Han Qian took the cigarette, Lu Shenga smiled. "Thank you for your trouble. The company's cooperation with Mr. Han has really saved Lu a lot of worry. I hope Han Qian can continue to cooperate with the company." Han Qian lit the cigarette and smiled. "That's natural. It's an honor to work with Director Liu. I look forward to Mr. Han giving me a surprise. I will not disappoint Mr. Liu. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 328. When the elevator came, neither of them was in a hurry to move. As a result, the executives waiting behind them did not dare to walk into the elevator rashly. Neither of them seemed to be in a hurry. They stood under the no attraction sign at the door of the elevator and spoke unscrupulously. Smoking. When did the relationship between Director Liu and the bully from the general department become so good? When all the executives were preparing to go to other elevators, Director Qian suddenly arrived, frowning and scolding them. What were they doing here? When everyone got out of the way and saw two guys smoking inside, Qian Ling was stunned and said coldly with a gloomy face. You two are here to lead by example. Han Qian quickly threw away the cigarette butt and scratched his head awkwardly. Lu Shengge also handed the cigarette butt to the assistant behind him and smiled awkwardly at Qian Ling. Sister Qian educates you. Han Qian was stunned. Qian Ling's expression didn't change. The fact that Lu Shengge had schizophrenia was a secret that couldn't be told in their circle. Now Han Qian didn't know whether Lu Shengge was just faking it or if there was something really wrong with his brain. It's really hard to treat people like this with common sense. Qian Ling walked into the elevator. Lu Shengge smiled and said to go to the cafeteria on the first floor. Everything about the staff can be ignored, except nutrition. The meals must be arranged reasonably. Han Qian scratched his head and said to go to the staff elevator. For a moment, Qian Ling seemed to be the chairman of the company. Han Qian and Lu Shengge left side by side. Han Qian tilted his head and looked at Lu Shengge and said softly. Director Liu, is there something wrong with your brain? Lu Shengge stopped, looked down at Han Qian, and snorted coldly. No quality. After saying that, he strode away, leaving Han Qian confused. Shouldn't he just ask if there was something wrong with his brain? What's going on? Lu Shengge went to the cafeteria and Han Qian went to the general department. They both acted as if what happened yesterday didn't happen. Lu Shengge rubbed his face when he walked into the cafeteria, and Han Qian held his stomach when he walked into the elevator. Some things are just good to keep in mind, there is no need to say them out loud. Lu Zhulong was very happy when Han Qian came to work in the general department. After shouting that a few naughty guys left, the general department became so deserted that he thought for a moment that he was almost 40 years old. Han Qian was not at all attack Lu Zhulong mercilessly. Why don't you accept the reality that you are almost 40 years old? Lu Zhulong looked at Han Qian resentfully and whispered. What you say will make my already missing Lan Lan even more painful. Mr. Liu, can you stop being bored? Why are you acting like a child? After dealing with young people for a long time, Lu Zhulong's temperament has really become like that of young people. People are easily infected by the things around them. Han Qian turned on the computer and browsed some information. As soon as he logged into Kakao, a warm message was sent. Here comes a chubby kitten rolling around on the pillow. Han Qian smiled and replied with 2 words. Fool. Nuan Nuan immediately replied with a little man holding a mace. Han Qian was amused by this cute little man. Then Nuan Nuan told him that he was going to a meeting. No nonsense. After saying this, his avatar was already dark. Click on Nuan Nuan. Information, personal information is written above. A gentle, silly little girl. It seems that Nuan Nuan still has a little misunderstanding of his seriousness. It should be said that he is gentle, and he is a silly iron-headed doll. Of course, these words must only be kept in the heart. There may be too many things on my mind. Lu Zhulong stood behind Han Qian holding a thermos cup, holding his chin and saying suspiciously. It exudes the sour smell of love. Han Qian closed the button and smiled without looking back. I wish you a lifetime of unrequited love, Ha 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 ha. Lu Zhuolong was instantly injured by 10,000 points. He turned around and went to where other employees were to guide their work. After sitting in the general department for an hour, Han Qian couldn't help it anymore. He stood up and walked out of the general department to find Yan Qingqing. Surprisingly, Yan Qingqing actually went out, and when Han Qian was bored, Lu Guangming called. This guy has been a bit clingy lately. What he meant on the phone was probably to ask Han Qian if he had time. Find a place to drink and chat in the evening. These days are simply too dull and boring. There is another thing to ask Han Qian. Are you interested? Lin Mend is celebrating his 60th birthday and has invited many prominent people in the city. I'm not going, but I really have something to do with you. You can book a place for the evening, and I may bring a few people with me. I met Lu Shenga yesterday. Let's meet and chat in the evening. Good. Lu Guangming hung up the phone. Han Qian lowered his head and thought as he walked downstairs. As a result, he bumped into Yan Qingqing, who had just stepped out of the elevator. Yan Qingqing covered her chest with her hands and gritted her teeth angrily. Han Qian, can you look at the road while you're walking? This is the second time. My breasts are hurting, so why don't you rub them for me? Han Qian, who had something on his mind, didn't care what Yan Qingqing said. He raised his head and really wanted to rub it, but Yan Qingqing slapped his hand off. He raised his head and put Han Qian's head under his arm and dragged him to the office. Feeling soft, Han Qian became even more confused. After being dragged into the office, Yan Qingqing threw Han Qian onto the sofa, then sat on him and said angrily, "Why didn't you call me when you went out to eat with Nuanuan in the evening? Since the off-duty time belongs to her, then the working time belongs to me. You are not allowed to go anywhere now." Han Qian slowly closed his eyes. Seeing this, Yan Qingqing lightly slapped Han Qian on the chest and said angrily, "What's wrong? You don't even want to talk to me." Han Qian opened his eyes and said helplessly, "Yaksha Empress, what do you want me to say? You said it belongs to you, and I didn't resist. Now I am like a piece of land, dominated by you. You think I'm rude? Han Qian, do you dislike me?" Han Qian was puzzled and looked at Yan Qingqing with a confused face and said, "My dear, where are you? When did I say I disliked you?" Yan Qingqing strangely sat on Han Qian's belly and acted coquettishly. "You just dislike me, Wen Nuan, Jing, they are both gentle and feminine, but you just dislike me for being too rude." Han Qian raised his hands and said seriously, "No, absolutely not. If it weren't for your rudeness, but, if it weren't for your arbitrariness, I might have fallen into the hands of those two gangsters last time." After saying this, Han Qian put his hand on Yan Qingqing's leg, squeezed it gently, and said with a smile, "This calf feels so comfortable, why would I dislike it, right?" After saying that, Yan Qingqing bent down and bit Han Qian's forehead. Han Qian screamed in pain, and the wrists of both hands were tightly held by Yan Qingqing. No wonder the warmth couldn't beat her, Yan Qingqing really didn't have the strength. Small. Yan Qingqing wiped her lips and glared at Han Qian angrily. "Calf? Warm legs are long, Cai Qinghu's legs are long, who touched you while wearing black stockings, and you still said my legs are short?" Han Qian covered his forehead, tears welling up in his eyes, and shouted, "When did I say your legs were short? What are you doing? Just bite me indiscriminately." The next second Yan Qingqing became very gentle, got off Han Qian's body, squatted on the edge of the sofa, put her chin on Han Qian's chest, tilted her head and looked at Han Qian and asked softly, "Han Qian, why aren't you angry? I always bully you, attack you, and scold you. Why aren't you angry?" Han Qian glared at Yan Qingqing from the corner of his eye and whispered angrily, "Angry? I'm angry. You bite me. Then why don't you lose your temper? Han Qian was stunned for a moment, then closed his eyes and whispered back. I can't bear to part with you. Besides, I have a good temper and don't get angry easily. Pht. Yan Qingqing laughed, stretched out her hand to pinch Han Qian's face, and said with a smile. If you have a good temper, there will be no bad-tempered people in the world. Now no one in the city dares to provoke you with more than one hand. Those people will be respectful when they see you. The more they are like this, the more I think about it. I bully you and want to prove that you like me and are not willing to get angry with me. Do you think this proves that statement? Han Qian opened his eyes and interrupted Yan Qingqing's words. Those who are favored feel confident. Yes. I'll get you some water. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, A Huan. Chapter 329. Concubine. Han Qian has given up resistance now. Brother Qian, his husband, General Han, the warmth of claiming to be his ex-wife, Cai Qinghu who claims to be his little secretary, and a silly concubine, is there any use in resisting? Useless. I almost forgot about the title of nephew. Got used to. Yan Qingqing said she was pouring water and forgot about it when she returned to her desk. She lowered her head and started to deal with the work. Now that Lushenga was suddenly in charge of the group, Yan Qingqing couldn't be too presumptuous, but her hair was still the same fiery red color. The two were silent for a long time. Han Qian put his hands behind his head and looked at the roof, saying softly, I have a dinner party tonight, which will involve a lot of people. Will you come with me tonight? Yan Qingqing suddenly became interested when she heard that she was going to have a dinner party with Han Qian, but before she could say anything, Han Qian said again. Forget it, Gao Jingchen will go too. You are not suitable to appear on the same occasion as him. Besides, I heard something. Did you make a promise of 100 million to Lushenga? When this matter was mentioned, Yan Qingqing's face became nervous. She stood up, put on cotton slippers, walked to Han Qian's side with small steps, squatted down, and whispered weakly. You know everything. Han Qian nodded, stretched out his hand and landed on Yan Qingqing's head, caressing it gently, looking at the emotionless opening on the roof. As a girl, you can be cowardly and don't work so hard. Of course, I don't know what you have experienced, but you have to think about what would have been your fate if you had not received this 100 million profit. How much is left? Yan Qingqing did not resist, lowered her head and muttered quietly. Counting everything you gave me, I still have more than half left. Silly girl, you're so stupid, it's 100 million. It seems to be a little difficult. After saying this, Han Qian sat up and took out his phone. Yan Qingqing suddenly reached out and held Han Qian's arm, shaking her head at Han Qian. No. I have to work hard on my own. You're already shorter than Wen Nuan, so be careful, the pressure makes you even shorter. That's not okay. You are already very tired, I can't cause you any trouble. Han Qian frowned, put down his phone, grabbed Yan Qingqing's wrist, rolled up his sleeves layer by layer, and said softly. When wearing a white suit, you must pay attention to the cuffs and collar. No one will notice if other parts are dirty, but there must be no stains in these two places. I think it will make you uncomfortable. After saying that, he put down his left hand and picked up the other hand to continue. Don't think it's easier for you to make money than me, okay? Don't glare at me. I'll prepare a bottom of 100 million for you first. If you can't make this, just use this bottom to make up for it, okay? Yan Qingqing glared at Han Qian angrily, but tears fell from her eyes unsatisfactorily, falling on her white trousers, leaving circles of watermarks. Han Qian frowned and said in confusion. Why are you crying? Straight man. Han Qian is an unreliable straight man. When he raised his hand to wipe Yan Qingqing's tears, Yan Qingqing slapped his hand off and yelled at Han Qian. I don't need your help. I have hands, I have legs, I can live. But after the anger, there was endless regret and heartache, holding Han Qian's face and choking. I don't want you to fight so hard anymore. You risked half your life for the warmth of $4 million. I don't want to see you hurt anymore. Han Qian held Yan Qingqing's hand, holding her face with one hand, and whispered. It shouldn't be too troublesome, I just haven't had the heart to do it. Yan Qingqing stood up and roared. I don't need you to help me. Han Qian's temper gradually increased. He raised his head and looked at Yan Qingqing coldly and said coldly. Then don't like me anymore. Whether I like you or not is my own business. Then what I do for you is my own business. After saying that, Han Qian stood up, walked around the coffee table, opened the door, and left the office, leaving Yan Qingqing kneeling on the ground, covering her face and choking. That gunshot wound almost took away Han Qian's life, and it also took away Yan Qingqing's strength. She couldn't bear the second injury, and it was because of her. Han Qian left Yang Jie's eyes in astonishment. When Han Qian walked far, far away, he suddenly turned back, came to Yang Jie, snatched a lollipop from the table, and said softly. Go in, comfort Mr. Yan, and tell him that I have already prepared some things. I will take you to the supermarket tomorrow to buy snacks for you and Bai. Xiao Yangjie looked at Mr. Yan's office with a difficult expression on her face and whispered. Brother Qianer, don't lie to me. I won't be scolded if I go in. Han Qian unwrapped the lollipop and said softly. You shouldn't be scolded. Even if you are scolded, you have to tell her what I told you. You can push the cart and buy snacks tomorrow. Brother Qian, I want cosmetics. What kind of makeup does the little brat wear? Xiao Baibei has a parent-teacher meeting tomorrow. It seems that he won't be able to come because of the recent cold. I know, go quickly. As he spoke, Han Qian raised his hand and patted little Yangjie's little butt. Little Yangjie covered her butt with both hands and ran away. Han Qian shrugged, just to scare her. When he turned around, Han Qian covered his ears. Why? Poor little Yangjie, don't blame me for lying to you. I'll buy you snacks tomorrow. Han Qian ran away, and little Yangjie was scolded by Yan Qingqing. She didn't hold any grudge against Yan Qingqing. What she resented was that Han Qian had lied to her. Han Qian, who had done bad things, went downstairs to find Gao Xingchen. In Gao Xingqing's name outside, they met Sun Yat and Wan Fang, who looked reluctant. They didn't know what they were arguing about. Han Qian tiptoed forward, stretched out his arms around Wan Fang's neck and clamped it under his arm. Wan Fang was so scared that Wan Fang screamed. Han Qian said with a bad smile. Let you put more snowballs into my neck last time, so you can taste the feeling of being attacked by surprise. Hearing Han Qian's voice and familiar smell, Wan Fang calmed down. She was held by Han Qian's neck quietly without resisting or struggling. Han Qian was a little confused. He let go of his hand and bent down to look from bottom to top. Looking at Wan Fang, he said doubtfully. What's wrong with you? Don't you feel energetic? Wan Fang looked at Han Qian and said nothing. This made Han Qian feel a little embarrassed. No matter how much the two of them argued, Wan Fang was still a girl. Han Qian straightened up, turned around and looked at Sun Ya, and said softly. Sister Yaya, what's wrong with her? She took the wrong medicine. Sun Ya smiled awkwardly and said nothing. Han Qian looked at Sun Ya suspiciously, and then glanced at Wan Fang. A strange idea suddenly came to his mind and he whispered. What? Vice President Gao wants to unspoken rules? Sister Yaya, you look like a pimp. Sun Ya covered her face and kicked Han Qian's calf, scolding. What nonsense are you talking about? Vice President Gao has a dinner party tonight and wants to ask Wan Fang to go with him. Dinner party. Han Qian was stunned for a moment, then glanced at Wan Fang, stepped forward and opened the door of Gao Xingqing's office, laughing loudly. Vice President Gao, you may have to cancel your dinner party tonight. You have to go to dinner with me tonight. Wan Fang looked at Han Qian in astonishment, lowered her head and whispered. I don't need you to help me out, and I don't want to owe you anything. Han Qian turned his back to Wan Fang and whispered. Bah, if I didn't really have a dinner party tonight, I would send you to the kennel outside the old janitor's door so that you could switch shifts with our company's husky. Wan Fang glared at Han Qian, raised her foot and was about to kick Han Qian's butt. At this time, Sun Ya made a dignified snort from the side. Wan Fang took a deep breath, and then Sun Ya pulled Wan Fang aside and whispered. Han Qian has rescued you, why don't you thank him? Do you really think Mr. Han has a good temper? The stubborn Wan Fang bit her lip and said nothing. She believed that she and Han Qian were friends, and there was no one who wanted to show favor to the other. If it was Han Qian who asked her for help today, Wan Fang would not hesitate to agree. But high fulfillment is not enough. Okay. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 330. Dinner. Wearing a gray suit, a black shirt with an open collar, and earrings on his ears, Gao Qing'ai looked like the leader of a Japanese club. At this time, he was sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed and reading the book in his hand. He raised his head and frowned at Han Qian. Dinner? Is it important? He shouted towards the door. Xiao, you guys go and do your work first. Master Han, please close the door. Han Qian closed the door with his feet, walked to the fish tank in the office and looked at several huge fish inside. Han Qian said softly. What do you feed this thing to? Feed the fish. They are all meat-eating things. I don't like vegetables very much. I ate too much when I was a child. I have to wait for my dad to get paid before I can eat a meal of meat every month. My family's conditions are pretty good. My dad can earn 800 a month, and my mom can earn 300. Han Qian shrugged and said softly. Then your family's conditions are pretty good. When you were young, your parents were only in their 20s. They were considered wealthy if they could earn 1,000 yuan a month. I met Lushenga yesterday and said some unpleasant things. Gao Jishi stood up and walked to the fish tank. He fished out a palm-sized crucian carp from another fish tank and threw it into the big tank. The moment the crucian carp entered the fish tank, the originally quiet fish tank instantly turned into a battlefield, with two fish fighting for it. Then he tore the crucian carp into pieces. Such a bloody scene was not easy for Han Qian to accept. He frowned and looked at these half-meter-long guys with disgust. Gao Qian put down the fishing net, bent down and flicked the fish tank with his fingers, grinning. I know you want to dig my sister out of the grave. I advise you not to do it. If you do, Lushenga's schizophrenia will be cured instantly. His madness is much more terrifying than Feng Lun's, but Master Han, you are too soft-hearted. Han Qian turned around and walked to the sofa to sit down, crossed his legs and smiled. What? You really want me to dig graves? Gao Xing'ai turned around and pouted. I'm not talking about one thing. Let me tell you one thing first. I have a lot of excess in this small tank. Taking away one or two will not have any impact. Are you anxious to get shares? You drew the pie, it's normal for me to be greedy. I don't care about the fight between you and Lushenga. He killed Qian Huan, and my sister died at the hands of Qian Ling. I don't want to reveal these sesame seeds and rotten millet things anymore. Others are not as strong as myself. I only believe in myself now. After getting the money, My parents can have a grandson. After pretending to be a grandson for so many years, I also want to be a father. The children in the orphanage all lack a father. Han Qian smiled heartlessly. Gao Xingyi frowned and looked at Han Qian with dissatisfaction in his eyes. He walked to the sofa and sat down and said softly, I wanted to send Wan Fang to a young man's bed tonight and ask him to work for me to lure Li Dongsheng into action. You suddenly disrupted my plan. I'm not in a very good mood right now. Han Qian curled his lips and shrugged. What? You want Li Dongsheng to rape Wu Sigwan? And then be caught by Li Dongsheng with his own eyes? Can you play with something that is in the world? You'd better not do such a shameful thing. I'm worried that your son will suffer for you. Gao Xingxing looked at Han Qian sideways and frowned. Do you have any other ideas? Han Qian spread his hands and shook his head. No, I shouldn't have either. These things are not what I should think about. I don't have that much time. There is a prerequisite for agreeing to get you 12% of the shares. You should remember it, right? I need a sum of funds. I want to trap you with my bare hands. How many? Han Qian stretched out a finger, and Gao Xingcheng immediately shook his head. Impossible, I can't come up with so much money. The most I can come up with is 20 million, and it's a desperate act. There is no need for so much, 10 million is enough. The valuation of Li Dahai's shares must be over 100 million, but it is just a valuation, and we are not doing serious business with him. After saying this, Han Qian picked up the teacup and said again. Listen to what you mean, Li Dahai feels sorry for Li Dongsheng? It hurts so much. Are you willing to give up so many shares? Don't let me get away with it. Gao Xingcheng said softly. I like money, not you. If you dare to like me, I'll beat you. Don't even think about fighting me. Lu Shenge's face doesn't look good, does it? After he finished speaking, his hand froze, and he slowly raised his head, his eyes full of disbelief, and he gradually tilted his head and said doubtfully. Did you attack Lu Shenge? Han Qian chuckled. He must not be feeling well eating recently. After all, hitting his face with his knee will break his mouth. You and I will go to the dinner party tonight, and there will be a few other people attending. Gao Xingxing put down his teacup and said coldly. Who? Lu Guangming, Luo Shanda, Wu Sigwan, you, me, Tu Xiao, this is all the gray network I can use in the city. There are some things I don't want Nuan to know. You are responsible for picking up Wu Sigwan. Keep the confidentiality confidential. Location I will send you a text message, and besides, don't go to the public relations department to touch Wan Fang, I only have a few friends in this company. Just friends. Gao Xingyi pouted and counterattacked. Are you expecting that you can't find anyone? Should I ask Sun Ya to help you? Get lost. Han Qian finally discovered that Gao Fulai was the kind of person who had no bottom line at all. At least Lin Zongheng and Lu Shenge all had some bottom line. Gao Fulai had no bottom line at all. When Han Qian got up and went out, Gao Qian Fulai shouted. Lin Mend is celebrating his 60th birthday. Wen Nuan, Yan Qingqing, Cai Qinghu, and your ex-father-in-law are all on the invitation list. Will you go? I'm not going. I'm too lazy to watch the big turtle and the little turtle wandering around in front of me. Han Qian went out and saw Wan Fang standing at the end of the corridor. Han Qian walked up to the girl who was looking at the window in a daze, flicked her head in the face, and laughed. What are you looking at? Is there a handsome guy? Wan Fang nodded vigorously. They are all handsome guys, all handsomer than you. Vice President Gao didn't say anything, right? Han Qian turned around, took out the cigarette and dropped it in his mouth. Just as he was about to speak, Wan Fang snatched the cigarette away and lit it skillfully. The girl was in a bad mood. She felt like a puppet on strings, and even her own life was at stake. There is no way to control it. Han Qian curled his lips and said sarcastically. If you want to kiss me, just say so. Wan Fang replied calmly. I don't mind if you think about me. You should know everything you know anyway. I'm the kind of person you think about. Do you believe me when I say I didn't think about anything? Wan Fang did not dwell on this topic, looked out the window, blew out a puff of smoke, and said softly. Han Qian, I want to resign. I want to open a cake shop and hire a few clerks. I will eat and sleep every day and be the boss. Han Qian nodded seriously and replied softly. We need a pancake and fruit seller outside our community. If you go there, the business will be booming. Do you want to give it a try? I'm telling you something serious. Oh. Then you go and visit the store. Once you have selected the location, I will handle the procedures for you. Then, do you want a kiss to thank you? Sorry, your mouth smells like smoke. After finishing her words, Wan Fang took out the mouth spray and sprayed it into her mouth a few times. She turned her head and squinted at Han Qian. Han Qian took a step back and roared angrily. Didn't I just sneak attack you? What about you? I will never give you a chance for revenge in this life. Goodbye. Goodbye. Don't start the West Point. I told you to go to the group but you won't go. Now you can put it aside, it's so annoying. Why don't you take the Yamen entrance exam? I graduated from junior high school. Well, you go ahead and collect the rags. I'll buy you a speaker. I still have a lot of things to do. You can think about your own life. I can't make you rich, and I won't try my best to help you. But I can still solve it with a phone call and a favor. Good. She knew Han Qian's influence in the city. If she ran into trouble, as long as she didn't commit murder or arson, Han Qian's phone call would solve the problem. Looking at the back of the person walking into the elevator, Wan Fang smiled, but the next second this guy suddenly ran away. When he came back, he walked up to Wan Fang and said seriously. Hey. Let's have lunch together. I don't have any money. A dime a day of interest. 5 points, no more. Wan Fang smiled, put her arm around Han Qian's shoulders and smiled. How many brothers? Han Qian was shocked. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, A Huan. Chapter 331. Han Qian was very idle throughout the afternoon. He played chess online in the general department, and played against others in the novice area. He won 15 consecutive games without losing a single game. When he won the 16th game, the opponent was panicked. Swearing loudly. Is it interesting to fry fish ponds? How much damage has society caused to you before you could do such a damaging thing? Despicable, shameless, obscene. Han Qian looked at the computer blankly, and Lu Zhuolong, who had been sitting aside for a long time, laughed. Fried fish pond, don't you understand? Let me explain to you. It's just killing a chicken with a sledgehammer. Han Qian, you are good at chess. Have you ever thought about trying Go? Han Qian let go of the mouse and said softly. No, I can't understand that, and I'll get irritated after playing for a long time. It's not as fun as playing a bachelor commander like chess. You deserve the scolding. After Lu Zhuolong left, Han Qian sent a text message to Nuan, telling her that he had something to do in the evening and that he was going out to eat, and asked her to go to nursery rhymes or poetry for a meal. It didn't take long for Nuan to call back. Asked Han Qian if he could read nursery rhymes and poems to his house for dinner at night. Is it as simple as just eating? Han Qian covered his head and said softly. As long as the most unacceptable scenes for me don't appear, you can be happy. Absolutely not. Nuan breathed a sigh of relief after hanging up the phone, while Yu Shisai on the side said doubtfully. What is the most unacceptable scene for Han Qian? when Nuan held his chin in his hands and sighed. Drinks can't be spilled on the sofa. There can't be any garbage except rice in the rice bowl. If there is leftover rice, there can't be bones or peels in it. The main thing is that drinks or wine can't be spilled. Well, he is very traditional and he is more particular about it. Oops. I feel happy just thinking about going home after the Chinese New Year. My mother-in-law will take care of him then. When talking about mother-in-law, Nuan squinted her eyes and smiled happily. When she mentioned that she wanted to deal with Han Qian, she clenched her fists. Yu Shisai, who was sitting next to her, didn't understand and said in confusion. I heard that the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law in our country is very stiff. It's not just our country, it seems to be like this in every country. Why has it changed when you come here? Have you been drugged? As she spoke, Yu Shisai stretched out her hand and touched Wen Nuan's forehead. Wen Nuan smiled and knocked off her best friend's hand, and continued to hold her chin with her hands and smile with squinting eyes. My mother-in-law is very good to me. After I got married to Han Qian, I went back several times. That's when I was treated like a princess. I slept until I woke up naturally in the morning. My father-in-law would give me and Han Qian a room early in the morning. The Kong is so hot that when I wake up and have breakfast, my father-in-law stews the crowing rooster. Because it disturbed my sleep. Nuan's eyes were full of satisfaction, recalling every detail of his return to her mother-in-law's house. Nuan opened up the conversation, seemingly to himself and to Yu Shisai. He closed his eyes while recalling and speaking. Because of this rooster, Han Qian even had a quarrel with my father-in-law, saying that I was not a spoiled young lady and that there were always roosters in the house. They could be sold for more than 100 yuan. My father-in-law didn't say anything and squatted in the yard to clean up the rooster. Chicken, when I was woken up and walked out of the house, my mother-in-law held my hand and asked me if I hadn't slept well or if the Kong was too hard. I really didn't sleep well at that time, so she said I was woken up by Han Qian. My mother-in-law only said one word at that time, beat. Then my father-in-law held up a broom and chased Han Qian across the yard. Nuan smiled happily, and said softly. Because we are in a rural area, we can't always have hot water. My mother-in-law bought several thermoses to fill me with hot water. She would wash my hands and face. Poetry. Do you know what it feels like to have someone wash your hair at home? Lying on the Kong, with a water basin placed beside the Kong, your mother-in-law washes your hair with an ancient comb, telling the embarrassing things about Han Qian when he was a child, and telling stories from her time. During the day, your father-in-law would buy several combs in the morning. The drink he planted would make delicious food for me in different ways. Once my mother-in-law said she would wash my feet, but I didn't dare to use it because Han Qian was really angry. He stood at the door and said that I dared to put my feet in. So I threw the basin away. Having said this, Nuan stopped laughing and lowered his head and whispered. I remember that Han Qian was slapped by my mother-in-law. My father-in-law was smoking and said, if you have the ability, call outsiders and don't pretend to be a man at home, hey. I regretted it at the time. In the end, it was Han Qian he washed my feet, and then he was afraid that my mother-in-law would see me, so when she came in, he washed his face with foot washing water. When Nuan smiled again. She had forgotten everything. She only had the time when she went back to her mother-in-law's house in her mind, dragging her face and squinting her crescent eyes as she smiled. At that time, in the winter, my aunt wanted to eat popsicles, but there was no place to buy them, so my mother-in-law put the pears outside to freeze, then put them in water and let me bite them and suck the pear juice. It was the first time I ate it, it was very delicious, and then my stomach hurt. My mother-in-law didn't sleep all night. She sat next to me, kept warming her hands on the bed, and then put them on my stomach. At that time, I felt really good. So happy, Actually I like Han Qian a little bit and my mother-in-law a little bit. Yu Shisai looked at Nuan Nuan. She didn't want to interrupt this girl's memories. She actually wanted to ask if this was true. How could there be such a mother-in-law? Nuan Nuan suddenly opened his eyes, looked at Yu Shisai and smiled sweetly. Why don't you go to my mother-in-law's house during the Chinese New Year? My mother-in-law likes pretty girls. I can ask my mother-in-law to take us to the market. We have everything, including colorful cotton-padded jackets, couplets, and money. There are all kinds of lanterns and firecrackers. Relatives will come to visit during the Chinese New Year. Han Qian has a seniority in the village. When he meets his peers, he always calls me little grandma. Poetry. I miss my mother-in-law. As he spoke, Nuan Nuan became unhappy. He lay on the table and took out his mobile phone and dialed the first number in the phone book. The call was quickly connected. Xiao Nuan, your dad and I were talking about each other just now. If Han Qian is busy, he won't come back during the New Year. You should go home early. The red mushrooms your dad picked are dried in the sun, and the chickens at home are also fat. Mom started making the noodles you like to eat today. The ones outside are not delicious, so Mom will cook them for you. I asked your dad to ask about it. During the Chinese New Year, we will also have crabs here. The sound on the phone was loud. Yu Shisai looked at the phone in Nuan Nuan's hand in shock. After dialing the number, without saying a word, her mother-in-law started chatting intimately. And it's still a long time before the Chinese New Year, and you've already started preparing things for the New Year? Nuan Nuan said coquettishly into the phone. Mom, I want to eat the stewed rice you made, the rice cakes you made, the mushrooms stewed by my father, and the meat cooked by my father, but I don't want to eat vegetables. Han Qian always forces me to eat them. He kept nagging and said I was stupid. Okay, I'll let your dad call Han Qian right now. You little brat doesn't know what's good or bad. How can my daughter-in-law use him to say that? But, Nuan Nuan, you also need to take a bite of green vegetables, dried kidney beans. The quilt maker came over yesterday, and I made 2 quilts for you, knowing that you love to be clean. What's wrong with you, little bastard? Are you talking about Xiao Nuan again? The old man's voice came from the other side of the phone. As soon as he heard it, he knew that Han Qian had been scolded, and Nuan Nuan sat up and left. Mom, I really want to go back early this year. Maybe I will go back after the solar year. I will live at home for more than a month. There was sudden silence on the other side of the phone, and then I heard the sound of my mother-in-law slapping my father-in-law. I told you to prepare early, prepare early. You insisted that the 2 children would come back late. Nuan Nuan, are you really coming back in the Gregorian calendar year? Mom will pick you up at the entrance of the village. When Nuan nodded vigorously. Mom, I keep my word. Every time she called her mother-in-law, Wen Nuan couldn't help crying. Her mother-in-law was so kind to her that she always thought that Li Jinhe was the mother-in-law and her mother-in-law was her biological mother. After hanging up the phone, Wen Nuan wiped her tears and looked at Yu Shisai. When Yu Shisai thought Nuan Nuan wanted to talk to her, Nuan Nuan spoke. Hey, I forgot to ask my mother how the house is being built. What should I buy for my mother when I get home? Poems, let's go shopping. Yu Shisai closed his eyes and sighed helplessly. There are still 2 months until the solar year. Only 2 months. I really want to go home now. Yu Shisai looked at the warmth lying on the table from the left to the right, and she was really jealous.